So I recently went through something I still can't fully wrap my head around. At first glance, it looked like just another morning in suburbia, quiet streets, trimmed lawns, the kind of place you'd never expect trouble. But what I woke up to that day, it felt more like a scene from a crime thriller than my own life. The pounding on my front door shook the walls. Not a neighbor's knock, not a delivery. This was loud enough to rattle the glass in my windows. My heart jolted awake before the rest of me did. I stumbled toward the entryway, still half asleep, wondering if maybe someone was hurt, if maybe there was some kind of emergency. Through the peephole, I saw two figures in matching uniforms. Their shirts bore bright block letters stitched across the chest, HOA Police. For a second, I actually froze. HOA Police? That didn't exist, not officially, not legally. Their badges gleamed, but even through the fisheye lens of the peephole, they looked cheap, plastic, like something you'd get at a Halloween store. Yet the way they stood, rigid, stern, shoulders squared, they were trying to sell the performance hard. My pulse quickened. Something about it felt wrong, but curiosity pushed me forward. I cracked open the door, keeping the chain in place. "Can I help you?" I asked. The taller one, sharp jaw, buzz cut, eyes like stone, pointed directly at me. "We're here on official business. Your property has multiple violations. We need access to your garage." For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Violations, my garage, my frustration bubbled up fast. "What are you talking about? There's nothing in my garage that breaks any rules." The second one, a woman with narrow, cold eyes, stepped forward. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. We have authority from the HOA. Something inside me shifted. No mention of warrants, no mention of real law enforcement, just that smug phrase, authority from the HOA. I took a slow breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Listen carefully. I'm an FBI agent. If you have a real cause, show me proper papers. Otherwise, you're trespassing." The man smirked, lips curling like I'd just given him the reaction he wanted. "Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes," he sneered. And that's when I saw her. Over his shoulder, peeking from behind them like a director proud of her little play, Karen. My neighbor, the self-appointed queen of our block. She had that smug grin plastered on her face, the one I'd seen 100 times when she nitpicked someone's lawn or scolded a family for leaving trash cans out too long. I should have known. My stomach twisted. Of course, this circus had her fingerprints all over it. I pushed the door open wider, stepping onto the porch. "Karen," I said, forcing my tone steady, "what's going on here?" She tilted her chin up, eyes glinting with triumph. "Oh, I'm just making sure the rules are followed. You can't claim special treatment because of your job." The fake officers nodded like actors taking cues. The woman chimed in, "We've had reports of strange activity in your garage." I let out a disbelieving laugh. "Strange activity, like what?" Karen shrugged, her smile never faltering. "I hear noises late at night. Could be anything, hazardous materials or maybe something darker. Maybe you're plotting something." Her words hung in the morning air, poisonous and absurd. My jaw clenched tight. "That's nonsense, and you know it." The tall officer pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. A flimsy, typed-up sheet with no seal, no signature, just a bold line that claimed I was under investigation by the HOA police. He waved it like it meant something. I kept my voice low and firm. "That's not an official document. You have no right to barge into my home." Karen sighed dramatically, as if I were the problem. "You sure you want to argue? I can add refusal to the list of violations." I stared at her. Since when does the HOA send out its own police force? She didn't answer. The shorter officer shoved a cheap plastic badge in my face. "We have new powers now. Step aside." My anger spiked hot, but years of training pressed it down. "No, unless you come back with real law enforcement and a valid warrant, you're not setting foot inside." The tall man leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Don't test us." I folded my arms, every muscle tight. "If you try to cross that line, you'll be the ones facing charges. Impersonating a law officer is a crime, and trust me, I'll make sure it sticks." Karen smirked like she held the upper hand. "Everybody on this street knows you think you're above the rules." At that exact moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down and froze. My boss's name flashed across the screen. A call this early? My stomach tightened. "One moment," I muttered, stepping back inside. The tall man barked after me, "We're not done here." I ignored him and answered the call. My boss's voice was strained, urgent. "Get to the office, right now, we have a problem." My throat went dry. Is this about a complaint against me? Silence stretched on the line before he finally said, "I'll explain in person." I ended the call, turned back toward the door. The fake cops were still planted there, Karen looming behind them like a general with her soldiers. "I have to go," I told them coldly. "I'll deal with this later." The woman shook her head. "If you leave, we'll mark you uncooperative." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You want your neighbors to see you run away." I exhaled sharply, jaw tight. "Karen, this is ridiculous. You know you can't arrest me." Her lips curled in satisfaction. "I'm not arresting you, they are, and I'm not stopping them." The tall man raised a pair of plastic zip ties, waving them in front of my face like a dare. And in that instant, I realized the truth. This wasn't about rules, it wasn't about violations. This was a setup, a trap designed to push me into a mistake that could cost me everything. And Karen, she was only just getting started. Everyone on that porch could feel the tension crackle, like static before a lightning strike. The tall man's hand gripped those plastic zip ties like he couldn't wait to use them, his eyes daring me to resist. The woman's fingers hovered near a cheap walkie-talkie, pretending to call in backup that didn't exist. And behind them, Karen smiling as if she were orchestrating the grand finale of some twisted play. My instincts screamed to shut this down hard, but I knew better. They wanted me angry. They wanted me to lash out, to give them the smallest excuse to twist the story against me. Every nerve in my body burned with restraint. "Put those down," I said firmly, locking eyes with the tall man. "Impersonating a law officer is a federal crime, and trust me, you don't want to test me on this." He sneered, stepping closer. "Maybe you should find out if these are fake, too." The plastic flexed in his hands. Karen clicked her tongue, shaking her head like I was a misbehaving child. "You might want to listen. They have the power to write you up. The neighborhood won't tolerate your arrogance forever." My laugh was sharp, bitter. "A fake citation means nothing, Karen, nothing." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll see." I glanced at my phone again, my boss's missed call still glowing at the top of the screen. His words echoed in my mind. "Get to the office. Right now. We have a problem." My gut churned. If whatever he needed was serious enough to drag me in before sunrise, then the last thing I needed was to be standing here playing along with Karen's fantasy police force. I forced myself to inhale slowly, leveling my voice. "I'm stepping away to handle an urgent matter at my real job. You all need to leave my property. Now." Karen tilted her head, feigning innocence. "We'll be watching. The HOA has eyes." I barked out a laugh, colder than I felt. "The real HOA might, but you sure aren't it." The tall man's jaw twitched, and for a moment I thought he might actually lunge forward. Instead, he pressed his lips into a thin line. "We'll give you one last warning," he growled, then glanced at Karen. She nodded solemnly, like a queen giving an execution order. "If you don't cooperate," the woman added, "we'll recommend disciplinary action." "Recommend it to whoever you want," I snapped. "Now get off my porch." They backed away, slow and deliberate, like they wanted me to believe this wasn't over. Just before turning, the woman raised her phone and snapped a photo of me. Karen gave a mocking smile. "Smile for the records." My stomach twisted, fury mixing with dread. They had no authority, no legitimacy, but they were documenting everything as if they did. I stood frozen until their fake cruiser rolled down the street. Only then did I slam the door shut, leaning back against it, breathing hard. My phone buzzed again in my hand. Another message from my boss, hurry. I grabbed my keys, every muscle tight. The fake cruiser was parked at the far end of the street, its lights off, engine idling like a predator waiting in the shadows. And Karen's car? Gone. No doubt she was already spinning her version of the story to whoever would listen. As I pulled out of my driveway, my eyes flicked to the mirror again and again, expecting them to follow. But the road behind me stayed empty. No headlights, no tailing car. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me. By the time I reached the FBI field office, my chest was tight with dread. My boss was waiting in the hallway, his posture stiff, his face pale with frustration. "You took your sweet time," he snapped. "I was dealing with—" "Save it," he cut in. He motioned me into his office, shutting the door with a slam. My pulse hammered. "What's going on?" He dropped into his chair, rubbing his temples. "Local authorities filed complaints against you this morning, threatening behavior, resisting inspection." The room tilted under me. "That's a lie. They weren't real authorities. They were impersonators. Karen staged the whole thing." He stared at me for a long beat, then sighed heavily. "That may be true, but the paperwork is on my desk, and higher-ups have flagged it. If it escalates, I can't protect you." My throat went dry. "Sir, I swear to you I didn't resist anyone. They came to my door with fake badges and fake forms. This is harassment." "Maybe," he said grimly. "But if more of these reports keep coming, Internal Affairs won't care about harassment. They'll care about your name being attached to misconduct." The words hit me like a gut punch. My career, the years I'd built with sweat and sacrifice, was suddenly dangling over a cliff, and Karen was the one holding the rope. As I left his office, my phone buzzed in my hand again. This time it was a text. No name, no number, just a chilling line. "Better watch your step. We know who you are." I stared at the words until my vision blurred. Whoever Karen had roped into this scheme, they weren't playing games anymore. They were after my reputation, my career, maybe even my freedom. And for the first time, I wondered just how far she was willing to go. Rumors travel faster than truth. I felt it the second I walked back into the office. Eyes lingered too long. Conversations cut off when I entered a room. Even people I considered allies gave me wary glances as if something had already poisoned their trust. Karen's little stunt with her fake officers had been a performance staged for one audience, my career, and she'd gotten her wish. By late afternoon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I slipped into the break room, desperate for a moment alone, when Davis, a fellow agent I trusted, followed me in. He lowered his voice. "Got a second?" I nodded, bracing myself. He checked the hallway before speaking. "Word is you're on thin ice. People are saying you threatened local authorities. Some even think you tried to block an inspection." My chest tightened. That's exactly what they want people to believe. Karen set me up. Those weren't real officers. Davis frowned. "Doesn't matter if they were fake. Paperwork was filed. That's all anyone cares about." I felt the room closing in, the air thick. So what, my neighbors play dress-up and suddenly I'm the villain? He shrugged helplessly. "Both maybe. Look, just watch your back." Those 3 words stuck to me like tar. Watch your back at work, at home, everywhere. By the time the sun sank low and I pulled into my driveway, I was exhausted but on edge. My headlights swept across a dark SUV parked down the block, its tinted windows glinting under the streetlight. My pulse jumped. The engine was off. No movement, but its presence was loud enough to make every hair on my neck stand on end. I parked, got out slowly, and pretended not to notice. But the whole walk to my door, I felt it watching me. Inside, I locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. For a moment, I stood there in silence, listening. My phone dinged an email notification. My heart sank as I read the subject line, "Internal Affairs Inquiry, Immediate Response Required." I opened it. Cold words glared back at me. "Provide explanation for your altercation with the local security detail this morning." My knees nearly buckled. Karen had done it. She'd linked her phony HOA police to official channels. And now my job wasn't just at risk. It was dangling by a thread. I dropped onto the couch, the room spinning around me. Hours blurred. At some point my phone buzzed again. A voice message, muffled and distorted. "We know you're digging. Back off or this gets worse." I clenched my phone so tightly my hand hurt. Karen wasn't just playing neighborhood queen anymore. She had help. Muscle, someone who knew how to intimidate with precision. The next morning I tried to find a crack in her facade. I dialed the HOA number listed on an old newsletter, straight to a robotic message about technical difficulties. I fired off an email to the board. It bounced back undeliverable. Even the neighborhood website was a ghost town, outdated and silent. Karen hadn't just hijacked the narrative. She'd cut every official line of communication, forcing everyone to play by her rules. That's when I called Alvarez, a no-nonsense local cop I'd traded intel with before. If anyone could see through the charade, it was him. I laid it out: fake badges, bogus citations, neighbors being harassed. He didn't sound convinced at first, but when I gave him the license plate of the so-called HOA cruiser, he paused. "If it belongs to a private security firm," he said slowly, "then they've got no legal right to act as cops. Leave it with me. I'll run it." For the first time all day, hope flickered. But back on my block, things only got worse. Neighbors who used to wave now whispered behind fences. Some wouldn't even look at me. It was like Karen had flipped a switch, painting me as the villain in my own story. The final straw came when Tamara, one of the few who still spoke to me, showed up on my porch, pale and shaking. She held out a paper with trembling hands. "They left this on my door," she whispered. I scanned it quickly. Another fake citation, this time for unapproved paint colors. A fine. A threat of forced eviction if she didn't pay. "This is a scam," I said, my anger barely contained. "Don't pay them, Tamara. I'll figure this out." Her eyes brimmed with fear. But what if it's real? What if they take my house? The desperation in her voice cut deep. She wasn't the target. She was collateral damage in Karen's war. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Trust me, this isn't real." But as she left, shoulders hunched with worry, doubt gnawed at me. Because fear has a way of making lies look like truth. And Karen was weaponizing that fear with precision. That night I sat at my table surrounded by documents, fake citations, and my own scribbled notes. A timeline was forming. Karen's fingerprints were on every piece of it. She'd been planting seeds for months, maybe years, until the moment was ripe. She wasn't just running a scam. She was building an empire. And somehow I had to bring it down, before it brought me down first. Some mornings you wake up knowing the storm is coming. Others, you wake up and realize you're already in it. By the time the sun crawled over the rooftops, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, emails piling in with one common thread: internal affairs wanted answers, and they weren't asking politely anymore. I sat across from my boss again, the tension in his jaw sharper than yesterday. He tapped a folder on his desk, his voice clipped. "We're getting more reports, all tied to you. Local security says you've been aggressive. Neighbors claim you're threatening them. This doesn't look good." I spread the bogus citations across his desk, my voice tight. "These aren't real. They're printed nonsense, signed by no one, stamped with nothing. Karen's behind it. She's using a fake police force to terrorize the neighborhood." He skimmed one, unimpressed. "Maybe, but if they're acting as private security, that's a gray area. My hands are tied." Gray area, that phrase made my blood boil. Because while the Bureau hesitated, Karen tightened her grip. That evening I pulled into my driveway and saw her standing in her yard, arms crossed, watching me like a hawk. I didn't even bother hiding my anger. I walked straight to her. "We need to talk," I said flatly. She raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "You've set your fake officers on me. You're targeting innocent neighbors. Why?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "It's not personal. People forget this community has standards. I'm just making sure we enforce them." I clenched my fists at my sides. By scaring everyone, by bleeding them dry with fake fines. Her shrug was infuriating. "They don't seem scared to me. They pay, they comply, and life goes on." "What's your endgame, Karen?" Her expression flickered, then hardened. "Endgame? I'm cleaning up the neighborhood. You're the one refusing to cooperate." Before I could fire back, one of her officers strode over, his badge flashing under the porch light. "Move along," he ordered coldly. "We've got business with Miss Garrett." I turned, jaw tight. "You have no legal authority here." He smirked. "We're all the authority we need." I could have argued. I wanted to. but one wrong word, one raised voice, and they'd file another complaint. So I stepped back, swallowing the anger burning in my chest. Karen gave me a final, smug glance before disappearing into her house. That night I dug into old files, desperate for leverage. And there it was, a reference to a proposed security program Karen had pushed years ago. A plan that had been tabled because no one wanted a militarized neighborhood. Back then, people laughed it off. Now, she'd resurrected it, twisted it, and shoved it down everyone's throats. A chill ran through me. If she could hijack an HOA, what else could she do? Days dragged by. Alvarez finally called, his voice grim. That plate belongs to a private security firm. No contracts, no approval. They're acting without authorization. Relief washed over me, proof, but it was thin. How do I tie it to Karen? He hesitated. We'd need neighbors to come forward, official statements. Otherwise, it's just your word. And that was the trap. Fear had kept everyone silent. Karen cultivated it carefully, planting it like weeds until the whole block was choking. Meanwhile, internal affairs circled closer. A supervisor summoned me, her tone sharp as she questioned every detail of my behavior. The report she read from was riddled with half-truths. Karen's narrative was spreading like wildfire, and I was choking on the smoke. Walking out of that meeting, my chest felt heavy. Even telling the truth made me look like a liability. Karen was winning. My breaking point came when I got home one night and found an envelope taped to my door. A counterfeit HOA seal stamped across the front. Inside, a notice claiming I'd violated Community Ordinance 301. The penalty, a fine, or in their words, further corrective measures. My patience snapped. I slammed the letter onto my kitchen table and dialed Karen's number, straight to voicemail. My voice shook with fury. This ends now, Karen. Stop the harassment, stop the games. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A hissed voice slithered through the speaker. Don't threaten Karen again. We know your boss. We can make your life very, very difficult. The line went dead before I could respond. For a long moment, I stood frozen in my kitchen, the silence screaming around me. Karen wasn't bluffing. She had help, real help. And if they were reaching into the bureau, then she had friends in places I never imagined. That night, I stared out the window at my quiet street. Perfect lawns, warm porch lights, everything looked normal. But beneath that veneer, a war was being waged, and the truth was brutal. I wasn't just up against Karen. I was up against an empire she'd built from fear. And if I didn't find a way to fight back soon, I was going to lose everything. The morning of the inquiry felt like walking into my own funeral. I'd spent the night packing, staring at files, trying to hold onto whatever scraps of proof I had. But exhaustion pressed on me like a weight, and as I walked into the bureau's echoing lobby, I could feel the judgment in every glance. Whispers, side eyes. People who once shook my hand now looked at me like I was poison. When the door to the conference room opened, my gut told me this was going to be bad. Inside, a panel of higher-ups sat stiff and stern, their expressions carved in stone. My boss stood at the back, arms folded, his face unreadable. An older agent cleared his throat. We're here to discuss the numerous complaints filed against you. Alleged threats, intimidation, refusals to cooperate with neighborhood authorities. My blood pounded in my ears. Those authorities are fakes. Their badges aren't real and the HOA never approved them. This is all a setup. A steely-eyed woman lifted a thick folder. We have statements from at least 10 neighbors claiming otherwise. They say you bullied them. They say you're a threat. My jaw tightened. I have documents that prove otherwise. The so-called HOA police belong to a private security firm with no legal standing. The panel exchanged glances, doubtful, detached. Then the door swung open, and my world stopped. Karen walked in, not in her yoga pants and smug grin this time. No, she wore a sleek navy suit, hair neatly pulled back, carrying a polished briefcase. She moved like she belonged there, like this was her stage all along. I couldn't stop myself. What is she doing here? One of the agents cleared his throat. Miss Garrett has submitted evidence on behalf of the local enforcement group. The room tilted. Karen, my neighbor, the tyrant who sent fake cops to my door, was standing inside an official FBI inquiry, testifying against me. She greeted the panel with calm confidence. "Good morning. I represent the interests of our community. I'd like to correct a few misunderstandings." My boss shot me a quick, startled glance. He hadn't known either. Karen opened her briefcase and produced a neat folder. "These files include reports from the neighborhood watch, noise complaints, suspicious activity, even a few alleged break-ins linked to this agent's property." "That's a lie," I snapped, but she continued smoothly, ignoring me. "We asked him repeatedly to cooperate with our volunteer police program. Instead, he refused. He made things difficult for everyone." She sighed, delicate, performative. "We only wanted to keep our streets safe." I stared at the panel, forcing my voice steady. "She's lying. She started this scheme months ago. She's using false citations to squeeze money out of people. I have the forms." The woman on the panel raised a brow. "Do you have these forms with you?" My stomach dropped. Not physically, but I emailed. Karen shook her head, feigning disappointment. "I'm afraid we've seen no such evidence. Perhaps the agent is confused." My chest burned. She was better prepared than I thought, weaving a narrative that painted me as unhinged, reckless. Then came the twist that knocked the air out of my lungs. The older agent on the panel cleared his throat. "Before we proceed, we should disclose your family connection." Karen gave a polite nod. "Yes, my uncle is the deputy director of this bureau. I tried to handle this matter quietly, but when the agent's behavior escalated, I had no choice but to bring it to his attention." My heart plummeted. Deputy director, one of the highest-ranking officers in the entire FBI and Karen's blood relative. Suddenly it all made sense. The silence from the HOA board, the roadblocks in every official channel, the lightning-fast complaints reaching my boss's desk. She hadn't just staged a neighborhood coup. She had a pipeline straight into the bureau itself. The panel turned to me, their faces unreadable. "Agent, can you provide concrete proof of criminal activity?" My voice cracked with fury and desperation. "I have records showing the security firm is unlicensed. Neighbors have told me they're being extorted, but they're too afraid to testify. That doesn't make it any less real." Karen pressed her lips together, her performance flawless. "My family and I care deeply about law and order. We only encourage safety, nothing more." Every word dripped with false sincerity. The panel dismissed us with a promise of further investigation, but I walked out feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Karen brushed past me on her way out, her perfume sharp and her whisper sharper. "Better watch your step." My fists clenched, but I said nothing. Not here, not in front of them. My boss caught up to me in the hallway, his voice low. "I didn't know she was connected to the deputy director. This puts us in a bad spot. You're not off the hook." I exhaled shakily. "I know." He gave me a look that was part warning, part pity. "Stay calm. Gather whatever evidence you can. We'll need more than hearsay." But as I walked out of the building, one truth weighed heavier than anything else. I wasn't just fighting a corrupt neighbor anymore. I was fighting the system itself. By the time I pulled into my driveway that night, every nerve in my body was raw. My neighbors barely looked at me anymore. If they did, it was with suspicion, fear, or worse, contempt. Karen had twisted the narrative so tight that I was no longer the agent who served the country. I was the problem on the block. I wanted one night of peace, just one, but peace doesn't live here anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Tamara, there at my door. "I'm scared." I was out of the house before I even realized. I grabbed my jacket. The evening air was cool, but my blood was boiling hot. When I rounded the hedge near her yard, I froze. The fake HOA cruiser sat idling at the curb, engine humming like a predator purring. Two of them were on her porch, pounding the door with fists loud enough to echo down the block. "Open up," the tall one barked. "Refuse and we'll mark this as another violation." My anger surged. Tamara had nothing to do with this. She was just caught in the crossfire of Karen's obsession. I cleared my throat loud and sharp. "That's enough." Both of them turned, their faces twisting when they saw me. "You again," the tall one spat, stepping down a stair. His hand hovered near the zip ties at his belt. "Didn't we warn you?" I held my ground, pulling my badge from my pocket. "I'm FBI. This is intimidation. Leave her alone." The shorter one smirked, raising a phone as if to record. "That badge won't save you, not anymore. We've got friends in high places." The irony almost made me laugh, but my pulse was hammering too fast. Tamara cracked the door open behind them, her eyes wide, her voice trembling. "Please, just go." One of them whipped out a piece of paper. "Then sign this statement. Confirm that your friend here has been harassing the neighborhood." My stomach dropped. They weren't just trying to break me. They were trying to turn her into their weapon. "Back off," I snapped, stepping closer. "She's signing nothing." The tall one shoved me with his shoulder, knocking me off balance on the porch steps. "Careful, agent. One wrong move and we file assault charges." I steadied myself, teeth clenched. "Impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime. You're the ones who should be worried." He jabbed a finger at me. "You won't get that chance." His voice dripped with threat, darker than HOA squabbles, darker than neighbor disputes. And then salvation. A voice rang out behind us. "What's going on here?" I spun. Alvarez was there off duty but still armed, badge clipped to his belt. Relief shot through me like lightning. He strode forward, calm but firm. "Ma'am," he addressed Tamara gently, "are these men trespassing?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes, they won't leave." Alvarez's gaze snapped to the imposters. "Identification now." The tall one flashed his flimsy badge, but Alvarez didn't flinch. "That's not official. Driver's licenses, or you're coming in for questioning." For the first time, they faltered. The swagger drained from their posture, replaced by hesitation. "We have the right to be here," one stammered. "Authorized by the HOA." "No," Alvarez said firmly, his voice sharp as a blade. "You don't have the right to threaten a homeowner on private property. Step away, now." He radioed for backup, the static filling the air. That was all it took. The imposters bolted, retreating to their cruiser before peeling off down the street. I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Alvarez shot me a look. "We'll run their plates again, might get somewhere this time, but you know how slippery this could be." Inside, Tamara was shaking as she sank onto her couch. I crouched in front of her. "They want me to blame you for everything," she whispered. "Said if I didn't sign, they'd take me to court." I steadied my voice, even though I wasn't steady inside. "It's a bluff. Their paperwork has no legal weight. Don't let them scare you." But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. Because if Karen could reach into the bureau itself, what couldn't she twist into official paperwork? Tamara wiped her eyes. "I'll give a statement to Alvarez. I'll tell him what happened tonight." Hope flickered faintly. Maybe, just maybe, this was the crack I needed. By the time I walked back home, the street was quiet again. Porch lights glowed, crickets chirped. Everything looked normal, but my phone buzzed the moment I stepped inside. A text blocked number. "You're out of time. Cooperate or lose everything." I dropped into a chair, staring at the words until they blurred. Karen's empire wasn't crumbling yet. It was growing bolder. And if I didn't expose her soon, I wouldn't just lose my career. I'd lose myself. The note arrived like a dare. I found it stuffed in my mailbox the next morning. No signature, just a single line scrawled in bold letters, "Meeting tonight at the community center. Be there." Every instinct screamed trap, but Alvarez's warning echoed in my head. "We need more witnesses. Press them." If Karen was calling everyone together, this might be my only chance to rip off her mask in front of the people she ruled through fear. That night, I slipped a recording device into my jacket pocket and double-checked my phone. Fully charged, ready to record. Before leaving, I texted Alvarez, "Heading to the meeting. If things go bad, you'll know where to find me." His reply came fast, "Be careful." The community center buzzed with voices when I arrived. Folding chairs lined the room. Almost every household from our block was there. Some whispered nervously. Others carried brand new "We support the HOA" signs, and near the front, basking in the attention, stood Karen. She was radiant in her false confidence. Clipboard in hand, papers stacked neatly by the podium, two of her officers flanking her like bodyguards. She looked less like a neighbor and more like a politician on the campaign trail. I slipped into a chair in the back, my stomach tight. Karen tapped the microphone. Her voice rang out with syrupy cheer. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. As you know, our community has been facing challenges lately. Rule violations, noise, safety concerns. That's why I established the HOA police to ensure order." Polite applause trickled in from her loyalists. Others stayed silent, eyes darting uneasily. Karen gestured to the uniforms at her side. "Thanks to our dedicated volunteers, we've already addressed numerous violations. We're protecting property values. We're keeping our streets safe." Her smile widened, her eyes sweeping the room. "Unfortunately, there's been resistance. One individual has repeatedly refused to follow our standards." And just like that, every head turned toward me. My pulse thundered. I stood slowly, every eye burning holes in my back. "That's a lie," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. Karen froze for half a heartbeat before tilting her head, her mask of control slipping just slightly. "Excuse me. Your so-called HOA police are not legitimate," I said, stepping into the aisle so the whole room could hear. "They're a private security firm with no authority here. You've been running a scam, extorting neighbors, pocketing money from fake citations." Gasps rippled, murmurs spread. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of her officers moved toward me, but I held up my badge. "Touch me and you'll regret it. I'm a federal agent." The room erupted in whispers. Karen's face tightened, but she plastered on her sugary smile. There he goes again, pretending rules don't apply to him. I pulled out my phone, projecting my voice so no one could miss it. "Here's proof. Alvarez ran the plates on your cruiser. The company you hired isn't licensed here. They don't have a contract. They have no legal authority, which means every fine, every threat, every so-called citation is worthless." Gasps grew louder. One man in the crowd stood abruptly, his voice shaking. "Karen, is that true? Are they not real security?" Her mask cracked, she stammered. "They're volunteers, community watch." "Volunteers don't get to cuff people with zip ties," I shot back. "They don't demand fines. They don't threaten families with eviction. You've been lying." My gaze darted to the stack of papers by her podium. "And those citations, let's see them." A neighbor snatched one up before Karen could react, his face drained as he read. "There's no seal, no signature. This isn't official at all." Voices rose, demanding answers. Phones came out, snapping pictures. One of Karen's officers muttered something under his breath and bolted for the door. Panic flared in Karen's eyes. "That's confidential," she shouted, grabbing at the papers, but it was too late. The tide was turning. And then, like fate itself had planned it, Alvarez stepped through the door in full uniform. His voice rang clear. "Everyone stay calm. We're conducting an investigation into unauthorized security practices and possible extortion." Karen went pale. Alvarez strode forward, eyes locked on her. "Ma'am, I'll need you to come with me for questioning." Karen tried to rally her supporters, her voice cracking. "This is harassment. I have connections. You can't do this." But the crowd had already shifted. The spell was broken. No one backed her up. As Alvarez cuffed her hands, the room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Some neighbors looked betrayed, others relieved. Tamara pushed through the crowd to my side, her eyes wet with relief. "You did it," she whispered. I gave her a tight nod, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. But even as Karen was led away, her voice echoed in my head. "I have connections." And I knew the fight wasn't over, not with the deputy director himself standing in her corner. The neighborhood never sounded quieter than the night Karen was taken away. No fake cruisers idling at the corner, no heavy boots pounding on porches, no phony citations tucked under doors, just the sound of crickets, the soft hum of street lamps, and for the first time in months, breathing space. But the quiet didn't mean peace, not yet. The very next day, statements had to be given, evidence reviewed. The HOA board, the real one, resurfaced after weeks of silence, shaken by how completely Karen had hijacked their name. Alvarez worked overtime with his team, collecting every scrap of proof. The flyers, the citations, the bogus forms neighbors had been too afraid to question. One by one, the truth spilled out. Tamara gave her statement first, her voice trembling but clear. Then others followed, neighbors who admitted they'd paid fines. Neighbors who confessed to signing complaints against me because they were pressured, bribed, or flat-out threatened. Every story cut deeper, because I realized Karen hadn't just targeted me, she'd strangled the whole block with fear. And yet the more they spoke, the lighter the air became. Fear cracked, truth seeped in. Her empire of lies, once so solid, was unraveling strand by strand. At the Bureau, Internal Affairs finally looked at my evidence, really looked at it. Alvarez's reports, the bogus company tied to the security squad, the statements piling up. The picture became undeniable. Karen's HOA police were an elaborate scam, feeding off intimidation and manipulation. But the most damning revelation came weeks later when the audit confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Karen hadn't been protecting the community. She'd been pocketing every dollar, thousands from fake fines, all funneled into her personal account. The scandal hit fast and hard. Her uncle, the deputy director himself, denied knowing. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he'd just turned a blind eye, but the damage was done. His name was tainted, his silence damning enough. Within weeks, he resigned quietly, retreating into the shadows while whispers swirled about how much he really knew. Karen, she wasn't smiling anymore. Facing charges of fraud, impersonation, and extortion, her little empire crumbled overnight. The fake cops vanished. The bogus company went under investigation. And Karen, once the loudest voice on the block, became nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered at backyard barbecues. Still, the scars lingered. Even after her arrest, I noticed the way neighbors looked at me differently. Some with guilt, others with shame. A few even came to my door, apologies on their lips. "We're sorry," they said. "We were scared." And I understood, because fear does that. It turns good people into shadows of themselves. One afternoon, my boss called me into his office. His expression was softer this time, almost proud. "Turns out you were right all along," he said. "Internal Affairs cleared you. The complaints were fabricated. Neighbors have recanted. You're back on track." For the first time in months, relief washed over me like rain after a drought. I walked out of that office lighter, my badge no longer a weight but a promise. I'd survived, barely, but I had. The neighborhood, too, began to heal. Slowly, laughter returned to backyards. Lawns stopped being battlefields, and the phrase HOA police became more of a joke than a threat. Tamara stopped by one evening holding a pie she'd baked. She smiled, tentative but grateful. "Feels like we can finally breathe again," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, took a storm to get here." Later that night, I sat on my porch, watching the sun dip low. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scanning for threats in the shadows. I wasn't checking the mirror for cars following me. And I realized something. Power built on fear never lasts. It cracks, it crumbles, and eventually it consumes the one who wields it. Karen had built her empire on control, on lies, on intimidation. But in the end, all it took was truth, spoken out loud, in front of everyone, to bring it crashing down. I survived Karen. I survived her fake cops, her threats, her uncle's shadow. But survival came with a lesson. Sometimes the loudest people aren't the strongest. Sometimes the ones who claim the most authority have the least right to it. And sometimes the only way to beat fear is to refuse to play by its rules. The street is just a street again now. Kids on bikes, neighbors mowing lawns, porch lights glowing warm instead of menacing. And me, I sit here with a small smile, badge in my pocket, grateful that the storm passed. Karen wanted to turn a quiet suburb into her kingdom. But kingdoms built on lies don't last. And mine is just a neighborhood again. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.